So I explained last week that each time we learn a chapter of Pirkei Avot, we preface our learning with an introductory Mishnah. And this Mishnah is made up from a combination of Talmud Sanhedrin 98 and Isaiah Yeshayahu, chapter 60, verse 21. And the introductory Mishnah goes as follows. Kol Yisrael yesh lahem chelek le'olam haba. All Israel has, sorry, just one second, I have a problem here, has a share in the world to come. Ve'amech kulam tzadikim. Your people are all righteous. Le'olam yirshu aretz, and they shall inherit the world forever. Netzeh matai, they are a branch of my planting. Ma'aseh yadai lehitpa'er, the work of my hands forever. Sorry, we've just got a problem here. Okay. And they will glorify me forever. So we learned that these words express the invincible connection between God and the Jewish people, regardless of their spiritual state or behavior. And that's why it says, Ve'amech kulam tzadikim. Your people are all righteous, regardless of where they are in life, which is quite an extraordinary reprieve, if you want. Now, it's great to know that God has such unshakable faith in us. But what kind of rope are the sages going to throw us to grasp hold of so that we are worthy? As the title of today's session suggests, Hindsight 2020, this wisdom or this perspective or this rope that we're being thrown begins with our looking at things differently, all the way back from the 21st century, 2020, in which we live, to the optically perfect 2020 vision, if you want, offered by the sages. Now, not perfect vision just because they were sages, because I know that won't wash with you guys, even though it is a thought. But I reference the optical 2020 perfect vision idea in seeking answers to the questions the sages pose. They offer a more nuanced, sharper, and insightful view of common human values, including what many might consider to be part of merely a peripheral vision, and so not that important, like those funny Space Invader machines the optician gets us to look into and press the beeper when we see pinpricks of light in different parts of the screen, which we sometimes miss. But it doesn't really matter because we got most of them. But really, it does matter. In our Mishnah today, which is the first Mishnah in chapter 4 of Pirkei Avot, the sage Ben Zoma talks about the prized ideals of wisdom, wealth, strength, which we could also understand as power, and the ideal of honor. So we know that throughout human history, society has prized these ideals. But are we sure what we actually mean by them? Our superficial thinking leads us to believe that these qualities are something a person has, when actually, as Ben Zoma shows, they rather signify something a person is. They are dimensions of character, which have to be patiently and sometimes painfully grown. So there is a sharp distinction here between these attributes are not something a person has, but it is something a person is. So before looking at the text, I'd just like to say that in the classic tale of The Wizard of Oz, each of the main characters is in search of something. If you remember, a heart, a way home, a brain, and courage. And as the story unfolds, it becomes clear that actually each already possesses the desired quality, but just can't recognize it because they don't know what to look for. The 1970s rock group America said it well in their song Tin Man. Oz never did give nothing to the Tin Man that he didn't already have. And Benzoma heartily agrees. So now we're going down to the actual source sheet. Let me give it to you. Where's the source sheet? Okay. Can you see that on your screens? Okay. So this source sheet is from Pirkei Avot, chapter 4, verse 1. Benzoma omer, Eizehu chacham, halomed mikol adam, shene'emar, mikol melamdai hiskarti, ki edotecha sichali. Benzoma said, who is wise? Mikol melamdai hiskarti, he who learns from everyone, as it said, from all who taught me have I gained understanding. And then there's this rather cryptic, ki edotecha sichali, at the end. Your testimonies are my conversation. And Benzoma here wants to suggest that from all the pupils, all the students, all the people, kol melamdai hiskarti, who have taught me, who have given me understanding, they themselves are God's testimonies. And as such, are my inner conversation with myself. Did I ever think of looking at another person as God's testimony? And we'll come back to that in detail. Then Benzoma asks, Ezehu gibor, who is strong? Hakovesh et yitzro. Now it isn't this big muscular guy. It's he who subdues his yitzro, his yetzer, his inclination, yetzer hara, his evil inclination, shene'emar, as it is said, tov erech apayim migibor, umoshel brucho malochad ir. He who is slow to anger. Do you recognize the word erech apayim? From the Yom Kippur davening, please God, be slow to anger. So the strong person subdues his anger. He is slow to anger. He doesn't flare up. And in this, he is stronger than the mighty. And he that rules his spirit, umoshel berucho, is stronger than he who takes a city. Malukad ir. That's a bit of a shift, isn't it? To have a look at this image that we have in our mind of a real toughie, a strongy, a powerful human being, individual in society. This really turns that kind of thing on its head and puts it into a very ethical working on oneself kind of frame of reference. So Ben Zoma is really asking us to think a little differently. Then Ben Zoma asks, who is rich? Ezehu ashir, hasamech bechelko. Who is rich? Who is happy with what he has? Shene'emar, yagia kapecha ki tochel ashrecha v'tov lach. You shall enjoy or reap the benefits of the fruit of your labors. And in that way, you'll be happy. And things will be good for you. Ashrecha v'tov lach. Ashrecha ba'olam hazeh, v'tov lach le'olam haba. You will not only be happy in this world, but you shall prosper ba'olam haba, in the world to come. Now, I remember when my kids were young, as kids do, they always want this and that and more and the other. And adults, big kids, are no different. And so one of my children and I had a long discussion about the difference between happiness in having what you want and in wanting what you have. And he was so impressed by this that a little while later I saw that on his bedstead, on his headboard, he'd written in his childlike way, happiness is having what I want, what I have. Happiness is having what I have, not what I want. And that stayed on his bedstead for a long, long time. And I know that it's percolated his adulthood. Because why? His kids tell me about it. Now we're going to look at mechubad. Ezehu mechubad. Who is honored? Hemechabed et briot, et habriot. He who honors the creation. Shene'emar, ki mechabdai achabed. For I honor those who honor me. Uvozai yikalu. But those who stun me shall be dishonored. So now, let's go back to the previous discussion. Right. I just have to get myself back to the right view. And then I can do this. Okay. Sorry, it's just... Okay. No, I just have to get this source sheet off. Okay. So I think that what we've seen here on the source sheet are some fascinating perspectives. But I believe that the wisdom underpins them all. And so we're going to look in some depth at Ben Zoma's first question, who is wise? Ben Zoma asks, who is wise? And answers, he who learns from everyone. As it is said, from all who taught me, have I gained understanding. And indeed, your testimonies are my conversation, which we just spoke about briefly before. What does it mean, your testimonies are my conversation? What does it mean to look at another person and see God? The Talmud tells us that once Ben Zoma saw a crowd of Jews on an elevation near to the Temple Mount. And immediately, so that's just, sorry, I'm just a little bit snookered with this view. Let's have a look and see. Okay. And immediately said a prescribed blessing. And the blessing he said was, blessed is he, blessed is God, who knows secrets. And this is from the Talmud Brachot in the Yerushalmi Talmud. Comes from Brachot, chapter 9, page 1. And then he added a second blessing. Blessed is he who created all these to be of service to me. And this he quoted from the Babylonian Talmud, the Talmud Bavli, 58a. Why did Ben Zoma say this blessing at all? After all, when one thinks of a crowd, or in the language of the Talmud, a multitude, it's merely an amorphous mass of human beings, a blob. But to our sages of blessed memory, a multitude is a collection of many individual human beings, each a sacred microcosm, a unique individual world created by God. So when you're looking at 1,000 people, you're looking at 1,000 secrets. You're looking at 1,000 hidden minds, which only God can know. And Ben Zoma realized something else, that because each human being is unique, there's something to be learned from every individual. And hence, his words in Pirkei Avot, Mikol melamdai hiskalti. I can learn something from every individual. Everyone has something of value to impart. So this is what Ben Zoma meant in blessing God for creating all these various kinds of people to be of service to me, to him, to Ben Zoma. Because every single one is a fellow student and a fellow teacher. Because we're all in the school of human life and experience. Each person is a human and a godly being. And as such, we can begin to have a conversation with ourselves as there being a testimony to godliness. Each of us, ourselves included, is a testimony to godliness. Never an object, always a valued subject. Even the thoroughly wicked bring their lessons. They bring their lessons in their example of evil, where we see how destructive it can be both to themselves and to others. And when speaking about our understanding of the human being as other, and the responsibility we have to them and they to us, it's really interesting to look at the words of the famous 20th century Jewish-French philosopher Emmanuel Levinas, who lived from 1906 to 1995, which is quite recent. And he has a remarkable philosophy of the other as person and as God. And he puts this very poignantly. In front of the face, he says in his essays on Judaism, I always demand more of myself. So is it that when we see others, we expect more of ourselves in relating to them, in our attitude towards them, in how we treat them, in how we perceive them? Levinas also says in regard to the wicked saying, the face presents itself and demands justice. Of course, in the face of evil or wrongdoing, there must be criticism and punishment. But the wise person demands more of themselves in the way these are meted out. Because to lose sight of the fact that another human being, evil as he or she appears, we address both their unique human and their shared godly aspect. So they and ourselves are equal. We are both God's creatures. So there's no one-upmanship there. But in their human aspect, yes, there's modification to be done. There's redress, there's punishment, there's dealing with them in their wrongness. But as Levin puts it, it has to call out from us additional compassion, because he says, in totality and infinity, the following. To recognize the other is to recognize a hunger. So when we look at another, and when we look at ourselves, we are not complete. There is a hunger. There is an emptiness. There is a need. There are imperfect places in them and us. And to recognize the other, therefore, the other human being, is to give. But in addition, it's also to give to God, to him whom one approaches as you, with a capital Y, in a dimension of height. So when we look at that other person, yes, in their wrongdoing, struggling in the mud at the bottom of a cave, but also in their dimension of height as a godly being, we will deal with them differently. So the essential point of Ben Zoma's teaching is that human beings can't create wisdom, but in their lives, they must find it. Wisdom is a reflective, ongoing life process, and it requires real humility. Facing the other, including the other, requires an emptying of the self, so to speak, in order to make room for the other. Not always a quality we conventionally expect in the wise. So that we truly see, apprehend, feel, sense the totality, as much as we can, of the other person. And in addition, we truthfully have to reflect on the me, the I, the wise, the wealthy, the strong, and the honored I, therefore, must modify their perspective and their behavior in their presence of the thou, the other, and God. We do not possess wisdom once and for all and own it as a property. It's a life's work, not an acquisition. It is a way of being. So now at the end of this piece of learning, we'll conclude the Mishnah from Talmud Makot, chapter 3:16. Rabbi Hanania ben Akashia Omer, Ratza HaKadosh Baruch Hu l'zachot et Yisrael, lefichach hirpa lehem Torah u'mitzvot. Rabbi Hanania ben Akashia says, the Holy One, blessed be He, desired to make Israel worthy And therefore he heaped Torah on them and lots of commandments. Shene'emar, Adonai chafetz laman tzidko, yagdil Torah v'ya'adir. For it says the Lord really wants to vindicate his people, that each individual may magnify and glorify God's teaching. And that is my offering. So, comments, questions, reactions, outrage, anything. Linda, did you want to say something?
No, I was fascinated, but no, I'll listen to everyone else first.
Lynndy?
Yeah.
Just to say, that was what you said was very thought-provoking as well, but just your voice and the whole thing was just very calming and soothing.
Yeah.
Oh,
so
thank you. For if that's my gift, especially to you, especially to you.
Thank you.
Healing
you.
one. Healing
really,
one.
Thank you.
The part that you said about one of your children, the discussion you had, it's something that was passed on to Stacey after her accident. And that little saying was in her room for all those years. And it's something that I always think about. So whatever discussion you had was so profound that it passed on to Stacey and it passed on to me. I just wish I could live that, but it's always in my head. Thank you.
It's hard to live that. It is hard to live that. What makes it hard? What makes it hard?
For me.
For,
because there are so many things in the world. You know, there is so much. I mean, now this time is really changing it, but you know, everyone is rethinking now. But you know, things are so easy to have and to buy and to, you know, there's just so much, for want of a better word, it's that awful word, stuff. And I think we've all, you know, the last few months, we've all learnt to live, you know, we don't need so much stuff.
I think that's really interesting, because I think what we've perhaps experienced, if we've allowed ourselves, because I mean, it can be really, really busy this time. The days fly. I sometimes, Shlomo and I look at each other at 9 o'clock and say, oh yeah, supper. And the days fly. But what you said is crucial, is that this time is, in a perverse way, a gift.
Absolutely.
To stand back and to reflect and to rest the spinning mind.
Yeah.
So thank you for that. How do you feel about the discussion in this Ben Zoma's chapter about the wicked? How easy is it to relate to people who are really a thorn in our side? You know, it doesn't have to be a wicked out there. It can be a wicked right in your lives. How do we squeeze out the God bit in then?
Ultimately, as Ben Zoma said, you learn different perspectives from seeing other people's viewpoints. And the person you think might be wicked might not necessarily be really wicked. We just don't understand where they're coming from, and we put them into a box. And maybe if we show more understanding towards each other, we gain more ourselves.
It's hard, isn't it? It's extremely hard.
Yeah, putting yourself in somebody else's shoes is very difficult. But I think that's what the mission is telling us to do. That you get a much broader feeling of what is out there when we can see it from the other people, way other people perceive it.
it's a hi Lana, nice to see you. It's a combo, isn't it? It's a combo. And Daniela joined recently as well. Good to see you. It's a combo, isn't it, of putting ourselves in their shoes, but they also have to put themselves in ours.
Yes.
And I think that kind of interaction, yeah. So Benzoma actually is tweaking the dynamics of interaction between humankind. It's very difficult. I mean, we know, you know, in the community, and everybody knows in their own life, how in families or in friendships or in marriages or in any kind of business relationship or any other context, there can be furious hostilities. And do we leave them to fester? Or how would we step forward? I'm not asking for solutions here, but I'm asking for these to be thoughts that you take away, not only in your mind now, but in your hearts. And there will be the question with, oh my goodness, is it worth the aggro? Do we want to unpack all that pain? The answer is yes. You've got to give it your 100%. You don't got to give it. There's no, you know, mandate. But there is a human obligation to the other.
But I think if there's disagreement,
sorry, your sound is going there. Can we try Lana? Did you want to speak?
No, I just wanted to echo also that I thought your voice was so calming, and I think I've been watching. I don't know if it's relevant, but as far as the Wicked, recognizing space for the Wicked, like I've been watching Fauda, and there's this terrorist and he's got this hostage, and you're like, all my empathy is obviously with this Israeli girl, but because you're allowed to the insight of this wicked, what we'd see as a wicked act, this wicked thing, it's allowing that space for someone else has just said that they come from perspective. I'm not saying it's justifiable, God forbid, but just to see that type of evidence that you can learn. How could we avoid, or how could this, you know, you can see how things can spiral out of control. Because it didn't look like the terrorist was this horrible person to begin with, but like people can be forced into things and just by fate, and like everyone has a choice, obviously, and obviously we wouldn't ever condone the choices that person made, but it seems to have linked or made me think about different things from what you were saying, in as opposed to how can you recognize wickedness, how can you learn from wickedness. I don't know if that was anything of interest to anyone else, but I thought I'd share that.
You're right, Lana. It's like hate breeds hate.
Yeah.
And you start, one person does something and then the other person does something back, and it's just a cycle.
Yeah.
That if nobody's prepared to break it, and then you're right, that's where they are in Israel, unfortunately.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not to start a political conversation, but
No. Just the point.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think this works on all levels. It works on political levels. It works on judicial levels. It works in every context of judgment. It works in you know, sort of land, sky, and sea levels. It works on fighting levels. It's making room for the other point of view.
Yeah.
Very difficult.
Very difficult. But if we don't, then we are selling ourselves short as human beings, because we're failing to see the godliness in ourselves. Mikamalam Daiskalki doesn't mean only learning from the other.
Yeah.
It means really scouring the vessel of the self.
Patricia, can I call you back?
Could we put mute on, please? Could we put mute on if we're not speaking?
Yeah. Let me call you back in a few minutes. Bye.
could we put mute on if we're not speaking direct? Any further comments? Everybody's really quiet.
That's because we all put mute on. That's because we all muted. We're not quiet. We're all here. We just all put mute back on.
Just don't mute the brain.
I was going to add, if it helps, is interesting for me is that, okay, I did pick a very extreme example, but the idea that the Jewish people have to be unified and the unity within the Jewish people, and that we're so diverse, which is obviously a strength as well, but the coming together to understand each other's differences and views, and there's more than one way to be Jewish or whatever it is, just that alone in a more communal environment, I think is healthy, because we know the divisiveness between the secular and the religious in Israel. We know the different, divisions within the different communities. But I think right now, I'm seeing a lot more cooperation, collaboration between the different Jewish groups, even in this country, like sharing platforms, webinars, educational things. So I think that coming together is also making space for each other and celebrating each other's differences, coming together in unity.
Well, it's interesting. I never square the circle. I'm a great not squarer of the circular, because I don't believe in unity as sameness. I believe in disparity as difference. And I think that the dialogue, which is a peaceful kind of strategy across those differences while maintaining difference or uniqueness, is far more important than trying to create a kind of a puree of views. I think the skill is precisely that, is to be different, acknowledge the difference, uniqueness, otherness in the other, and the commonalities as well as the uniquenesses must be maintained, because otherwise we just lose all the rich diversity of humankind. It's a far trickier process, but very necessary. Even if you spit blood disagreeing with the other, there are these, Ben Zomer says, dynamics which must be present to avoid your and their utter destruction. So it's flourishing within difference. And if this could have a title other than 2020, which is, this double entendre of saying in 2020 we are so rushed and we idealize values which perhaps we don't even espouse as they appear in the modern world. Let's step back and look at what the sages are saying about each person's uniqueness and how that changes our interaction, how that changes our behavior. Much more demanding, much more demanding. Unity as sameness or uniformity, boring. And also unrealistic. And also inadvisable. Much trickier. Because like Bob the Builder, can we do it? No, we can't. I think we're going to change Bob the Builder's response, which is, can we do it? Yes, we must. So we have to invest 100%, which might end up in being 75 or 99. But we have to invest this reflective practice and allowing the other space in being wise. And in doing this, we will become wise. Although wise is not a destination, unfortunately, it's a process. Wendy, you have a question bubbling in your face.
I'm just looking at it from a practical perspective of someone's in front of me and I am trying to understand them as an individual. And I think that I am empathizing and I'm doing it quite well, but I see that there is no reciprocity, because isn't that what Levin is actually about? That at the end of the day, that's where real communication is the reciprocity within the communication. And I can't get out of that kind of hamster wheel of, if there is no reciprocity from the other person, where then do you go? Do you use that as something that you internalize to yourself?
Can you explain what you mean? How do you mean internally?
Well, I meet somebody and we have a conversation and there's a complete disconnect. And I try and understand the person, their circumstances, their perspective. But I see that doesn't get anywhere at all. Whilst I might be trying, the way I'm trying is not getting anywhere. Is that my fault, or is it also to do with the fact that the other person isn't practicing what Pekavot, Ben Zoma, and, for example, Levinas is saying? Is that because they lack the capacity to do so? They lack the knowledge? I think that it's incredibly, incredibly complex. And the question is, how does one deal with that complexity? Is it something that one must use for oneself, or does one have an obligation to the other person to try and say, well, you know, why don't you try this, why don't you try that, or whatever? Is that judgmental in that conversation? Does that make sense?
Yes. I see Daniela wants to come in on this. Unmute, Daniela. Unmute yourself. Yeah. No, unmute.
I thought I did. I'm good now.
No, you have, yes.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Wendy. I see this all as our own journey, Wendy. This is how I view it. Because you can't change another person's perspective. That's another entirely different challenge. In my view, what Lynndy's saying to us is that we're going to come across all sorts of complex individuals in our lives, and some with perspectives are utterly polarized from us, and we just don't get them and we don't understand them. And this is about our challenge as to how we process this, and the different skills that we need to explore in ourselves as to how we either choose to engage with them, or we alter and we compromise how we are managing that process. It's trial and error, but I do see this as our individual journey. I think if we were trying to rationalize and try and get the other person's perspective to meet us halfway or whatever, that's an entirely, in my view, Lindsay, you might have got it wrong. That's a whole different challenge entirely. But we will in the process learn about and develop our own skills and our own wisdom as to that person's perspective that you mentioned, Wendy, and to alter the way we are managing it and managing the relationship and managing what we're getting out of it. Because essentially it might be just learning for ourselves and realizing, basically I see this as an individual challenge, and growing from all these different types of people that we come across, whether they're really tricky. It's about us developing those skills to manage. And like you said, if everyone was sweet and wonderful and easy peasy, we wouldn't be expanding ourselves and on our own intellect and our own wisdom. That's why I think we've got everyone with a whole blend of different complexities, and it's about how we learn to manage that. And like you said, Lindsay, it's a continued journey through our lives that we hope to hone continually as a skill.
Okay, thanks both Wendy and Daniela for those points. And they're very, very central to the conversation. We might ask what the maximal hostility and freeze could be in relation to this person just get. And I think it's well explained by the difference between Levinas and his preoccupation with the face of the other, the face at close proximity, as compared with the German philosopher Heidegger, who always looked at the other as though they were on the horizon, far from me, so to speak, almost invisible, small, disappearing. Levinas looks at the face. And here it is, the absolute sine qua non for relating to that person, the worst case scenario, is that only when you see this face eye to eye can you not kill. And Levinas uses that as the absolute foundation for this relationship. You might feel like killing this person, really, really. But when they are central to your life, your inner life, your own detoxification as a human being, so that you will be able to be whole and complete, are you going to step back from murdering them? Murdering them in your mind, murdering them in your heart, murdering them in your life, murdering them absolutely practically because you just can't have them in the world anymore? Or are you going to sidestep this and say, okay, you know what, just let go of it. They're on the horizon, they're irrelevant. Ben Zoma and Levinas forbid us to diminish the other or ourself in the process. And as Daniela says, if we don't get them, try and try again until they realize that maybe they should, after all, take a step forward. And the commonality is bigger than you both. It's a transcendent you. It's a godly you. It's a you which Michael knows very well, because we discussed it in our Tehillim series, that a human being is a chelek Elokai mimal mamash, a piece of godliness, a bit of God. Mamash means really, and bimamashut means in physical reality. Activate your God bit and step back from your animal bit. And we see that Ben Zoma, Zurgesund Roberta, we're saying that Ben Zoma looks at the strong person and looks and says he subdues his ruach, his animal strength and wish to have and to want and to own and be powerful. This is the Yitzro, the evil inclination, that he has to subdue, and so do we. It's the godly bit of the soul we want, not the animal bit. It's a horrible challenge. But there it is. So can I leave you with suitable discomfort. You can take this nowhere or somewhere. But as Shakespeare says, this above all, to yourself be true, and it will follow as the night the day. You cannot then be false to any man, non-gendered. Hamlet, Laertes to his son Polonius. It's a good thing to pass on. So let's leave it there, and hopefully next week we'll have a look at some more Pirkei Avot.